I think that what was so surprising is that so many American children are at risk of being in a household that uses food stamps. So we found that almost 50% of American children at some point during childhood will find themselves in a household that uses food stamps. A couple other interesting findings are that almost a quarter of American children will be in a household that uses food stamps for 5 or more years throughout their childhood. Maybe not consecutively, but at 5 different years, they'll find themselves in a household that uses food stamps. If you look at certain things like race or family structure or education, you see that there's some pretty wide differences for children. So for example, for black kids, 90% of them at some point will find themselves in a household that uses food stamps. For kids that are in a single-parent family, it's almost the same percentage. 91% will find themselves at some period of time in a household that uses food stamps. So although the use of food stamps is pretty widespread, for particular groups, it's just, it's a really, really high percentage. This study is based on 30 years of information. And so although we're seeing today the fallout of the economic recession in terms of families being in economic trouble, this work really looks over a long period of time, and during that period of time there were recessions and so on. So it's kind of, I think the findings are somewhat universal in that they incorporate periods of rough economic times and periods of relatively good economic times. And it's similar to in medical research when you see people do studies that estimate the risk of developing heart disease or cancer, and they're able to say, well, 30% of the population at some point will develop heart disease. It's the same kind of approach that's used here, except here we're looking at economic risk. Even short-term poverty has been known to create a number of problems, but if a child is in poverty, it increases a variety of health risks. So things like lead poisoning, asthma, dental problems, a variety of issues. And one study just estimated a couple years ago that the total healthcare cost of having children in poverty in the United States was annually $22 billion. So having such a high rate of poverty and food stamp use among children is really an issue of health care and health care expenditure, as well as the well-being of children. What this study indicates is it's sending out a warning signal. And it's saying that from a policy perspective, there are a huge number of American children that are at risk of experiencing poverty. And what we need to think about are programs and policies that will address some of these issues, the economic well-being of children. So there's a variety of things we can think about: nutrition programs and expanding those kinds of programs, programs to keep children out of poverty. These are the kinds of things that we really should be considering in this country and really expanding in the future.